everyone, good afternoon. It's Shirley with Spirit of Matter, and I'm in a Do It by Feet episode. So it has been a while since I've done a Do It by Feet episode, but here we are, and I've learned with Saturn retrograde in Pisces, and Pisces rules the feet, and Saturn is our bone structure, our nails, our skin. And so I've learned a couple of more things that go deeper into the root issues around feet. And I want to discuss the astrology of those things. So this is a Saturn rule ascendant from Aquarius with Saturn retrograde in Pisces, Saturn hour. And this is already Saturn night, so I am basically filming with heavy Saturn and retrograde. And because I'm talking about the root issues at the bone structure of the feet, then the Saturn is basically in place. So just so that you'll get the bosses, just so that you'll get a bit of the view. I hope you can see here my screen. And we to the chart of the day. So the sun is with the descendant, 15 degrees Leo. Moon is in 18 degrees Taurus. Here trining and 18 degrees Mars in the 8th house in Virgo. So the moon is separating from conjunction to Jupiter and trining Mars. It does happen from the 18th degrees, which is actually considered not so good degree. As for lunar mention, I don't remember. But no, the program that would check this right now is annoying. So yeah. So this is the chart of the day. The midheaven is ruled by Jupiter. 1 degree Sagittarius with Jupiter in the 4th house and the IC in the 5th. So the midheaven is in the 11th, fitting for discussing publicly about issues of feet and hips and so on. And the story goes like this. I have been practicing some exercises for my bone structure, basically the toe structure of the feet, which is hallux valgus, and that means when your bigger toe turns inward, and it can also mean like your pinky turns inward, and that's very funny. And I've been doing that for a couple of months now, and eventually I felt quite frustrated. I felt exhausted. I felt like something more is needed. Certain things that I hoped to give me yielding didn't work or something like that. And I was like, like something needs to happen. And so, as I was watching in one of my channels some videos about like actually wealth related stuff, so big houses, big yachts, and planes for some reason. So there was an episode about the hallux valgus again, and again it's always good to keep a couple of channels even for your viewing, because there's stuff you kind of keep it, there's that team, for this channel, that team, and you can follow the elections and so on. So there was another episode about treating the feet. And as I was watching, it was by a person who doesn't have hallux valgus himself, but he treated patients and he said everybody treats the feet, the exercises for the toes, but they're not going to get rid of it because, and this is where it's so fitting astrologically that I'm like, how come I didn't think about it? It starts actually with the hips. Okay, so you have to stretch your hips, and then you have to stretch your calves, and all the way down you have to make sure that your knees are not inward bent, or like not bent to inward or outward, and then you get to make sure your ankle is not bent inward or outward. And then either you have, well, they talk about flat foot or flat feet. I have the other way. I have the high foot or high feet, high arch. So you gotta start from the hips, or basically, like to open the hips and to strengthen the hips and to stretch the hips, and then go down. Make sure your knees are good. Make sure your calves, your ankles, and then you get to the feet, and only then you get to the toes. Because if you're even if you do surgery, which immediately puts everything back in place, but even if you do surgery for this issue, you still have to practice your posture. You have to practice the leg structure from the hips, and that will allow for a good structure for the toes. Okay, you get me? Now, the feet themselves is Pisces. Okay? The hips is Sagittarius. What is Pisces and Sagittarius ruled by? Jupiter. That, by the way, also rules the liver. Okay? It rules, yes, the lungs, and also is associated with the liver, depending on what type of astrology, if you do Vedic or not, or tropical. So immediately we get a picture that pertains to the legs, which is like root chakra. Okay? The hips, which is Sagittarius. And so, of course, if we are talking about the ruler, the traditional rulership of Jupiter, we are also talking about Mercury. And I have addressed this when I talked about Mercury as the toes of the feet, because our fingers and our hands are Mercury ruled, and the toes of the feet are basically like the fingers of the feet, right? So that is Mercury Pisces. And so basically when we are treating our feet, we're not just treating our Pisces era, Pisces place. We are also treating Jupiter, we treat in Mercury, we treat in Sagittarius, and we treat in Virgo and Gemini. Why? Because Virgo is in front of Pisces and Gemini is in front of Sagittarius. Now remember, in the episode when I don't know if it aired yet when this one airs, but there's an episode that I did, and I'm going to give you some really nice photos here of the area while speaking. So go back to us because I will show you, let's say, Rahu. Here Rahu is in 28 degrees Aries, okay? And so Draconian, it would be 0 degrees Aries. And I talked about Draconian astrology. And then I talked about Ra and Ketu, and I told you that I know an Israeli astrologer named Yair Tribelsky, who's very, very famous in Israel, is from the Pluto Sol generation, Pluto Leos. So when he talks about the dragon head and tail, he says it's not only dragon head, it's a dragon, has also wings, it's an X, it's the entire axis of the mutables, the cardinals, or the fixed signs, okay? Activated in a 4 houses X. And I was pondering about this and how eclipses basically affect the entire modality, okay? And that is cardinal, fixed, and mutable. And now, when I talk about treating our feet, and if we want to look astrologically, what to improve upon, or what will treating our feet improve upon, we are talking at the entire mutable axis of our chart, and whatever is triggered by Mercury and Jupiter. So, that kind of gives us more of a perspective. For example, if you take your pinky toe and take your bigger toe and you do something, don't know if I can show this. Yes, if you do basically something like this, but with the feet. Okay, basically take your pinky and you stretch it here. Take your toe, bigger toe, and you stretch it here. Yeah, and you stretch the fingers out. You will notice that your shoulders and neck, like this, they get straightened out. Okay, like you straighten your shoulders. And that is also already touching. It is also true if you do this with your hips. Okay, if you do this with your hips, you will notice the toes straighten up. So this is again hips, Sagittarius, toes, Mercury and Pisces. And you notice your shoulders, that is also Mercury. Now what happens when our shoulders are stretched and our neck is straight? We have more room for the lungs, for the heart to open. And that is another Jupiter signification, is the lungs, Jupiter ruling the lungs. And then when our heart opens, what else is opening? The liver. Okay, and then of course the intestines, which is already Virgo. So now I want you to think about what all that I just said. Okay, I want you to think also about another system that we use in medicine, and that is chakra system. And so feet are root chakra. Liver is solar plexus chakra. Lungs is heart chakra. Okay, shoulders and neck is already throat chakra. Okay, of course there are meridians, and that way the heart chakra is also in the between the shoulders and the lungs, basically. So, and there is higher heart chakra, and all of these are associated. Okay, and of course the solar is also related to the third eye, which is our eyebrows, between our eyebrows chakra. There's also the ears, and the root is also associated with the heart chakra. Okay, and the throat is also associated with the second sex chakra. Okay, if the root is the survivalistic kind of animalistic sex, and survival, wealth, money, the second sex chakra is the pleasure, the joy of life, the connections that we have that are deeply emotional with those around us, so the sense of belonging emotionally, whereas root is also our ancestors. Okay, and then we have the root and the crown, which is kind of like the spirit of the above, of the skies, of the air, or the divinities of above, and then the earth itself and into the earth, maybe underworld, but that depends on how you interpret it. All that I just said, anything that we have with the bone structure of our feet, or with the structure of our feet, the structure is Saturn, that rules Aquarius and Capricorn. Okay? Saturn also rules stress, worry, anxiety, but also dedication, both working and dedicating. And I'm not saying working hard for a reason, okay? Because Saturn is also the sabbatical. It's when we rest. Saturn is not about working hard, it's about working efficiently. You need to do the right thing at the right times for the right duration. Get the right things at the right time for the right duration with the right measurements. Again, Saturn also rules agriculture. So a couple of things that happened to me as I learned how to tend to my hips, my knees. So one thing is that I began to think about wealth again, and I began to think about planting a forest. Again, that I have inspiration to plant a forest. How much would it? And not only that, I began to take practical steps of finding out how much would it cost to invest. And I found a place that takes investors as of £10,000 to invest in planting a forest. I don't know too much about this, but it was kind of like the first step of, hey, this is the figure, this is how much, this is where, and so on and so forth. This is what you can do to take practical steps towards that vision. So that was very interesting now that Saturn is going retrograde in Pisces. Okay, so working on my feet and the feet structure, thinking about agriculture and building wealth. Another thing, and that is something I noticed also earlier on, and now with Jupiter in Taurus, it's kind of calling for us to mention it again. And that is, there's something very orgasmic about stretching. There's something very orgasmic about realigning the body. And I really like that because basically orgasms bring oxytocin. They bring a cocktail. One of the important ingredients of this cocktail is oxytocin. And especially if you give love to your feet when you're doing these stretches. And oxytocin is responsible for unlearning. So what are we unlearning? We are unlearning anything that traumatized, that shook us. Either it's ancestral, okay, root related, so survival issues. So if you have issues or anxious about survival or very survival, then the orgasmic is basically unlearning this anxiety. And indeed, as that was happening, I began to think about, yes, there are all these dark things going in the world, but there are also people receiving government grants to plant forests. This is also happening. And so I kind of to begin to open my mind and to open my eyes and to open my heart to hope that is based on reality. Okay? So that is in terms of survival, in terms of like something for the generation, like planting a forest, and creating the environment that distresses, nature. Another thing is the realization of how that feet issue, that is basically like your entire body, think about your shoulders crunched up, your toes crushed in, your entire body going like inwards. think about when a person receives like, a punch or a blow, they go inwards. And this is the effect of, traumatic life events. The effect of traumatic life events on us, that we get like, oh, inwards. And then we learn to open our posture and realign ourselves with hope, with life, and rejuvenation. And that can also be after traumas that are related to sexuality, of course. So that is how this axis is kind of being activated. Mercury is ruling children as well. And Jupiter also ruling children. Jupiter ruling also fertility, like semen. It's ruling in Vedic astrology the bringer of children. Okay, so the father of the children, or guru, or teacher. Mercury is also ruling trade, and Jupiter is ruling life philosophy and the sense of spirituality. So kind of like feeling belonging in the world in the greater sense of the word. While Mercury is about mingling in the world in the very practical sense. So exchanging energy, exchanging money, exchanging gestures. Handshake is very mercurial. Okay, when you do business, you handshake when you meet somebody new. You do networking. Handshake is a very mercurial activities, and it's also ruling both in Gemini. It's kind of like the child to try something new. Well, in Virgo, it's more like a bit of more mature Mercury, which is like a bit nitpicking and like the accountant or the managerial. But definitely the person who is able to pay greater attention to details, with the risk factor that they see the trees rather than the forest. Okay, Jupiter is more about seeing the forests, and so you also think about hands-on experience versus theory, and how to kind of hold the stick in both hands, that we must learn how to do when we are doing our Rahu in Ketu, which for me are in Rahu in Gemini and Ketu in Sagittarius. So that is basically a story of how I practice, and then I felt exhausted. I felt like I have no power to change. And then after relaxing and just forgetting about it, I ran by chance into some mercurial Jupiterians, kind of like big money. Big is Jupiter, money is Mercury. Trade is Mercury. So big money, big ships, big mansions, everything big. And so again, I found this video about how to treat Helix Vagus, but now there was more information. It's kind of like you have unlocked the next phase of your recovery or of your journey. And now I've learned that, I'm not only working on my toes, because I was ready to concentrate on my toes structure, to build from the root up, from foundations. And now, as I was ready for that, I unlocked actually teaching that begins from the hips down. Okay, so from the hips down, and learning how to build good structure for your bones and muscles, and from that structure, your toes and the structure of the toes, or the bones of the toes, won't begin to crumble under the pressure that you put your body in. So this is very skeletal structure in the legs and the hips and the knees and so on. So very, very heavy Saturn. I do have my Jupiter natally in Saturn sign. And so hips, basically what I didn't know, even though I was doing gymnastics from very young age, you tend to be over flexible in some places, but actually kind of not so flexible in others. And the bone structure, you really, like, if you don't pay attention, you do exercise. And of course, if you have childhood trauma, It doesn't matter how much exercise you do, that thing needs to be tended to. And yes, that one unfortunately was also part of the story. So this is a very interesting revelation and another step in the road. And all of this is happening when Jupiter is in Venus sign, the moon just crossed Jupiter, and Venus is retrograde in my 6th house, which is house of health. Okay, physical health. And so with the Saturn retrograde and the Venus retrograde, I kind of came back to these exercises, but discovered something new. So like returning to something and re-embellishing. Okay, returning and re-embellishing, returning and deepening a practice that is good for my health. So yes, I hope this was useful. Saturn, by the way, also rules the nails, also rules the skin. I'm beginning from the skeletal structure, and I just choose like a point of, this is my point of interference. I'm also, of course, tending to washing my feet with vinegar. Actually, I've been washing my feet with vinegar, and it's very refreshing. And it's very simple. So make sure I have like a bucket with vinegar and cool water, and it's very refreshing for me and good for the blood. And I have my salve that I made with rosemary, clove, some rose essential oil, and roses, and yeah, what else was there? There's probably a lot of things, but mainly rosemary. And that is, in olive oil and beeswax, and that is something that I put on my feet and on my hair as well. So my hair is becoming more pampered as it needs to be. Needs to be pampered. So going from inwards, from the structure of the skeleton, and tending to the skin, and tending, of course, like to cleanliness of my body, and this is the point of interference, because kind of like you need to focus your efforts sometimes, because otherwise it gets crazy and you don't know where to start and you can't keep up a good routine. So I hope that this episode was helpful, and I will see you in my next episode. The moon has moved to the 19th degree. Right now is applying to conjunct Uranus. So for those of you watching this, I don't know if I will release it right now. Actually, I think I will release it on a Jupiter day. So yeah, thank you for watching, and I hope that I went over a lot. So if you have questions, feel free to ask me things in the comment section, and I will address what I know, or I will do a study live for what I don't know. So I'm studying that live with you, and yeah. You can subscribe to my channel and click the bell if you want to receive notifications. Now I have heard that some people get kind of cancelled on YouTube. It happened to me with one video because I speak about everything. I speak about whatever is true. Okay, whatever is true, then I speak it. And so it's sometimes not in correlation with whatever is desired for a certain interest, people with interest to be said. But that means that this happened to a person I know, and I know from YouTube, and some of their viewers were not receiving notifications when they uploaded videos. So if it happens with me, what I suggest you to do is, if you want to keep updated and you like what I do, you write the name of my channel. It is Spirit of Matter, right? I think that's still the name, Spirit of Matter. And you write the name of my channel, and you go back and you research my channel every once in a while to check if there were episodes. This is the only thing you can do, or you can write to me your email. Okay, I have my email, and you can write me your email. So whenever I upload, if I manage to keep up, then I will at least once a week or once in 2 weeks, I will send you the updates of like what episodes I uploaded. And this is simply because it's not even to market anything. Not that I don't want to market in the future, but it's like, it's before even marketing, it's just so we can keep in touch, even if some episodes get canceled or some people suddenly don't receive notification. There was a word about Rumble, so I'm checking this out. I will find a good election to open a profile on Rumble and see if they are better there. I was even considering OnlyFans in the sense of maybe I can talk about things I cannot talk about in YouTube. Okay, so it's kind of like to exploit OnlyFans for truth stuff rather than for porn stuff. So everything is on like a possibility. Thank you for watching.